What's up, Michael? We're going to do our quick podcast here virtually. So,
Real estate on record.
real estate on record. Tell me about the market clearly, because we have a lot of stuff going on. Like a few great sales that happened last week, and new listings coming on board. But what are you seeing for let's say, what are we now? This is the second quarter.
Yeah, April. Today's April 1st.
April, yeah. Today's the start of the second quarter. Wow.
So, what we're seeing, I would say, we have some like very nice listings right now in terms of finished, fully renovated stuff, which is definitely helping getting eyes on the property. Showings, like for example, that one in Bolton that we had, I think we had like 25 showings in like 2.5 weeks, which is pretty decent for like volume. But people are getting out there. But again, going back to buyers, it's they're very specific. There are definitely different pressures. A lot of feedback I'm getting too, just in general, is that people want the security of selling first, definitely. So a lot of feedback I'm getting is they love the property, but it's hard for them to move forward without knowing what they can secure their sale for. And then obviously there's other factors. People are in the middle of personal things that are taking some time too. But yeah, I would say right now, like the renovated stuff that we have on the market, it's helping get eyes on the property and helping bring in offers and showings. But those renovations necessarily aren't allotting to like higher price points by any means. Like we're looking at stuff that's sold in January, and we're almost like probably like 4 or 5%, I would say, under, and we're probably a better product overall, like in quality of finish. So definitely buyers are taking their time. There's a lack of motivation and urgency, I think, is the biggest thing right now, to be honest, that we're seeing here.
Yeah, I think even just touching on that too, we're gonna hit 25,000 units this week if we not hit it already today. So highest inventory ever in my career. I know obviously there's more houses than the past, but ultimately at the same time, it's like we have a lot more larger population that should be chewing up the inventory. So it is we're basically lopsided with how much inventory is in the market right now. So
I think it's the highest inventory in like a March, April.
Oh, by far. We don't get to this. Even when the market corrected itself in like the big like 17 and 22, we've never had this high of inventory. This first time.
Last year we broke the record with the highest amount of inventory, which was 26,000 units, and that was at the end of our basically dump of inventory at the end of the fall market. Is when we see the most inventory. So we're only getting into the spring, and we're off by 1,000 units that we typically see at the end, like, sorry, not typically, that we saw last year breaking records at the end of October. So yeah, like you said, I think we're probably going to hit like 30,000+ units this year.
Yeah, the inventory is a huge issue, but it's also like last week we had 900 sales, which was very positive. That's a lot of sales, considering the market where it's at. It's just we're packing up 1,800 2,000 units, and then let's say 900 came off. So it's one of those deals, right? So like between 1,700 and 2,000 units a week getting packed on, and then minus the whatever gets subtracted with the sales. But I think even now, second quarter going forward, we're gonna see a little bit of a slowdown for sure. This is why we're advising clients that you got to get on the market, be sharp with pricing. Don't take anything for granted, because it's not a market you want to play with. And this is obviously the advice we're given. And this is why we blew out those properties the last couple of weeks, was just based on going back and adjusting price and making sure we're competitive, because there is buyers out there. It's just they want to make sure they're getting a deal and they're not stuck in something that depreciate further. I think that's a biggie right now.
Yeah, no, any buyer that we've been talking to right now has to feel like they're getting, like you keep saying, the most like benefits and features for the best price. So getting obviously the best value,
yeah,
in a buyer's eyes, right? So yeah, I think it's gonna continue like that. Even clients we're talking to, they're like, well, maybe we'll pull it off the market and try later, but like I don't see what's gonna make things better. I'm gonna be honest. Going into this election at the end of the month, but like economically, I don't know what brings. Like we're not selling houses in a high volume, so that's going to hurt the trades. Like we haven't sold houses in a high volume for about 2 years, 18 months to 24 months. So like when's that slowdown coming in that sector for trades and stuff? And then I don't know what's the next sector that's going to prop things up and get things going to make things get moving again. I really don't see it right now, to be honest.
Yeah, same here. It's like I'm asking people that I missed something. I talk to clients, and they're like, "It's gonna be fine. Everything looks great. We're gonna be good." I'm like, "Please tell me something that I missed. Like, I want to be wrong. I want to be wrong. I don't want to be right. Like, there's no point of being right in a situation where you look at economically, it looks pretty shattered in a sense, right? Even with the new government that's potentially coming in at the end of the month, which might even be another liberal government, which it's pretty scary, to be honest. So we'll see what happens.
But even like some conversations we're having with clients that like their plan, they don't really have a plan. It's like hope. Like that's the biggest word I keep hearing. It's like I have had a couple tough conversations with some people that we haven't got going yet, but it's like, okay, we kind of got to get going because it's like they're going to be in a situation within like, I don't know, 3 to 6 months, right? And when I reverse engineered it and tell them like, yeah, it might take us 3 months to sell your house. Like, are you okay until that point? It's like their answer is like they hope everything's gonna like work out. Like it's like we kind of want to like stay ahead of the curve too a little bit, right? Like if you are in a little bit of a situation, like let's talk about it and get going sooner than later, because the longer wait, the harder it's going to be to help solve that situation for you, right? And then you don't want to put it into like the bank's hands, because the bank ultimately wants to get their equity out, their investment out of the property, and if they're going to take a loss, they're going to take a loss at your cost, right? It's not going to affect them as much as it's going to affect you. So at least if you can act ahead of time and get your house on the market, and even if you have to downsize for a couple of years, and when things come back and level out, we can pop you back right into where you were, right? But ultimately, I think people need to like just face some reality to a certain degree, because like hope isn't gonna like fix anything for anyone moving forward, right? So let's kind of be proactive versus reactive, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's like pricing is number one, and when you get into the market, just look at where the balance is, and you got to be 5% at minimum below that, and away you go. This is our advice even to clients, even to the builders that we're dealing with. It's just like we need to be more competitive on pricing, because it's not a market that's going to pop back and you're going to see like a big rebound like we've seen. When we experienced the last 15 years, that's what it was. Since I've been in real estate, you'd had a little bit of slow time, and then it just like boom, an explosion. Like the next year, it was like insane. You couldn't keep up with the pace, and then it's just this another like just drop, and then a pickup. But it's not the case anymore. Like in a perfect world, like if we would see like a crazy economy going forward where we had like a super appreciation, you'd have to have everything aligned with it. And that's job growth, economic growth, that's prosperity in the country, it's direction. Clearly it's basically a sailboat with no sails in the ocean. And it's just literally getting beat up by the waves. This is what I feel like it, right?
Well, it's been getting beat up for 10 years since 2014, right? We're up 0.5% GDP growth over a 10-year span, which is the worst out of the G20 countries. Like,
what was that? Sorry, was it the laggard?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like only 0.5% GDP growth since 2014 to 2024.
Yeah, it was. So maybe there's another metric, the laggard. In the last 10 years, it grew only 0.5%. Canada, Italy grew 0.7.
Yeah, that's the same one.
Okay, but you know what that stands for, the laggard, right?
No.
So it's basically quality on life, economic future, and safety security. Like basically standards of living. That's what that laggard is. So it's basically it's literally lagged. Look how lagged behind Canada is, 0.5%, which is insanity compared to Italy at 13.7. Like I hope these numbers are accurate, but they are, because they're from the statistics that website. And America's at 22%, and we had poor leadership here the last 4 years. To be honest, you're going to see now the growth in this country going forward. This is what we're advising Canadians, that if you don't want to move to the States, I get it. It's hard. It's not an easy thing. But if you have like an investment property, and I even told my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, they have a little property in Alliston, like sell the damn thing, get it out, cash it out. Even if you put it in a mutual fund, leave it in there for a couple of years until everything kind of straightens out. Like clearly you don't want to sell your houses. That's where you live, low mortgage and all that. But that investment property is not doing you any justice. And this is a message that I never thought I would be saying, is to sell your properties and don't hold them, especially if they're like replaceable. I've been saying this since 2022. If they're replaceable, get rid of them and just literally sit that money in a mutual fund, whatever. Like, you don't have to dump it in a stock market. Just dump it in something that's going to pay you 5% a year, and let it sit. And then ultimately on the way out of that, you let's just say you in 2 years or something like that, there's stability, economic growth, there's a future, there's some direction in the country, then you may want to put it into real estate at that point, where you start seeing that, like that wheels, like almost like a steam engine train that's starting to like pull those wheels, right? It's like a slow momentum. So that's what you want. Like, and no one responds. It's just crazy. It's like we're not doing it because we're trying to earn a commission off of that. We're doing it because we're giving you advice on what we're doing. And just not only that, if you're a 9 to 5 worker and you're not really paying attention to the news, because this is probably, maybe this was always like this and now I'm 40 years old, but in the past, like the different administrations, if it was left or right, whatever it was like a tennis match. It was like to pass the ball kind of thing, and it would 4 years, and it would, okay, there were some things that were changed, but not much. It was always this focus on making the country great, if it's Canada, US, or whatever. But this last administration has done, it was almost like purposely to destroy the country and its fabric of the future. And I don't know, this is probably the only time in my life I think it's so important to kind of follow politics and understand where everything is what's happening currently, and both sides of the border, and obviously it is on the world stage too, what's happening in China, what's happening whatever in Russia, whatever it is in Europe, in North America, like in Canada, US, like what's happening. I think we're going to start deciphering these messages, because that's the only way I'm kind of moving forward where I'm putting money, to be honest. And when I talk to clients and I tell them a little bit, I don't want to go too much into detail, because then it sounds like like you're a conspiracy theorist, but it's just information that's out there, right? So I go to touch on it lightly, why you should sell. Let's say for Alliston, for example, Alliston, again, following the media. So now Honda is going to be building their largest plant outside of Japan in Indiana, the USA. They just announced this right now. Okay, so this is under the Trump administration. So now they're going to build their largest plant in Indiana. Okay, so I don't know, how long does it take to get on the ground? 2 years? I'm not sure. How long does it take? 2 years to build a factory? If they go hammer time, maybe a little bit longer, maybe less. I'm not sure, but they're going to go for it, and they already bought the land. They're going to start building. Alliston is tied to the Honda plant, right? That's like great income, blue collar income, or like blue collar, high paid earners, blue collar workers in Alliston are working at Honda. Now, for Honda to shut down that plant, it's going to be a lot easier than paying the tariffs going to the United States. Why? Population difference. I think as Canadians, we forget that all of Canada, which has the same landmass as Russia, is only 41 million people. And the United States is 320 to 100, 340 million, depends, which statistics. So let's say 340 million people in the United States. Doesn't make sense for Honda to be transporting these cars cross border and paying tariffs on them. It's a lot cheaper to build and manufacture a plant right in the U.S. So what does that do? Like I don't know which Hondas are built at that factory. I think it's a Civic or whatever it is. But these are high production vehicles. That's their bread and butter. So now if they start pulling that away, like how many cars they really want to manufacture in Canada for a small population that buys how many Hondas? I'm not sure. So that plant may be shut down. So what does that do economically for Alliston in the future? That's going to devastate that community by far. You're going to have an empty plant just sitting in the middle of Alliston. If you've ever been through where the plant is, it's just in the middle of the downtown. So what's going to replace that? Canada doesn't manufacture, they don't produce a car. There's not like a car that's a Canadian design and manufactured. These are American and Japanese vehicles that are manufactured in Canada. Why? Because it was a loophole to build them for cheaper, because Honda doesn't have a union in the Honda plant the last time I checked, and they would build it cheaper there using metals that supposedly were coming in from China, which there was a ban on that going into the United States. They would use that, produce the cars cheaper, and then sell them for back in the United States and make a bigger profit than if they created them in the United States. So that's going to end. So what is that? So then going, long story short, like talking to my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, you got to sell it now. You're ahead of the curve. Like there's they're going to start building that plant. It might take 2 years, but if that plant closes down, you have this property you can probably cash out at 7 and change right now. Is it worth 5? Is it worth 4? Is it worth exactly what you paid for it when you bought it 6 years ago? You know, and it's just, I think it's very important to kind of follow what's happening, because the whole world is changing. Even the relationship between the United States and Europe is changing. Like, everything is changing. You need to be, and I hate to watch it, because even when we were trained early on in coaching, it's like, stay away from the media. It's too negative. You don't need that in your mind. You got to be focused on positivity. But I think right now it's so important to kind of understand where everything's happening, how the chips are lying, because it's changing so quickly.
Well, it's history too. It's like I don't think we've ever had a time like this where
No.
things have changed so drastically.
No.
Like, going back to what you were saying, when you were a kid, like, you never really followed politics, but I don't think there was as
I always
much.
follow politics. I got to be honest.
Sorry, follow,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
not
yeah.
as close. But
Since the
like
late 80s, I watched the inauguration of George Sr. in the White House. So imagine it's been like most of my life.
most people probably haven't followed politics
Yeah.
until now, because, and I think the reason a lot of people are is because there's such a drastic change and it's affecting our day-to-day lives, right? So now we actually want to pay attention, which I get it. Like, I am one of them that didn't follow it as much previously, but now, like, you're forced to, because
You're
you want
forced.
to what's going to happen for the future, and make decisions, like you said, ahead of the curve for my family, right? So
100%.
ultimately, I think that's probably what's getting a lot of people off the fence and kind of getting involved.
Economically, like, I know some people want to get into it, like, on another side of it, like, more politically, like, oh, they're banning abortion rights. Like, forget about all that. Let's focus on the economic factors, and that's how you're going to make decisions. Look at now, like, Canada already. The U.S. has already threatened Canada. If Canada goes behind our back and starts, doing stuff with Europe, and I mentioned this way before it was even said, but this week here it says, so if Canada starts, backdooring us and going over to Europe and start doing this stuff, we're gonna hammer Europe. They're gonna hammer Europe with more tariffs, and they're gonna flatten it. So this is what I said earlier on. I go, that's what's going to happen. If people think, because you talk to some Canadians, like, oh, they're just going to go to Europe, they're going to go to China. It's not going to happen. You're on the border of the United States. You can't just go around doing shit. You're going to have to figure out some compromise between two countries, and that's it. Because it's national security at that end. And this is why Russia invaded Ukraine, as much as people don't believe it. But there was a big push for that, where when the USSR got demolished, there was one rule that was never to put NATO on the border of Russia, because that's the border, right? Because NATO is basically foreign troops on foreign army, which is made up of all different countries, right? Like whoever's in the UN. So the States, all of the Europe and Canada, whatever, we're all in there. So it's foreign troops on your border, which is national security. So Russia, again, people don't want to believe it, but Russia invaded Ukraine for this purpose, because they wanted to put NATO. They were trying to sign a NATO bill to get Ukraine to NATO, which caused this. So just with that history lesson that just happened, you see the war hopefully comes to an end now. If Canada can't do any shit like that, where it's like Chinese influence or European influence too much, because it's, again, a security risk for the United States. So that's not going to happen. They're going to have some sort of compromise between both countries that'll work out for both of them. And if that's, better trade negotiations would be great. If that's going to be a union, I know a lot of people are against it. A lot of people are actually for it. People that we know, or will sign up the next day, or like a 51st state. Like, I don't think it's going to go that far, but I mean, a union would be great if we're all in the same currency and we can kind of do business, open borders. I think that's beneficial. Forget about, like, I think you got to look for your kids at this point here. What's their future? Is Canada going to be a place for them to grow and economically and have a good life? Obviously, there's a lot of security concerns now with the country, like quality of living, break-ins. We just heard of a break-in yesterday in Bolton, family held hostage. This is Bolton. I lived there, in Nobleton.
At gunpoint. Like,
at gunpoint. Supposedly they pistol whipped the daughter. Like, this is nuts. And you're in a country you can't protect yourself with firearms. So the only people that have guns, I know it's taboo when we moved to the United States, where we're in a Second Amendment state, or you're allowed to carry a weapon. It's going to be concealed, but you're allowed to carry a weapon. It's taboo, but you get used to it. You start to realize, yeah, if somebody enters my home, I can protect my family, which is, I think every dad would want to do that, not see their children or their wife be injured, right? So, again, that's a taboo from from Canada and Canadian living, but I'm sure a lot of Canadians are starting to realize how important it would be to protect their family when now the only people that have firearms are basically criminals. And this is something I've said for a long time, but now it's starting to come into flourishing where people are they're scared, they're terrified. Right?
We live in Gotham.
Gotham City with no Batman.
There's no Batman. No, there's no Batman.
On that bombshell, as the GTA tour used to always say. Okay, man, let's wrap this one up. Let's get into something positive.
Yeah.
I think we'll be fine. Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching this episode of Real Estate on Record. Hope to catch you guys on the next one.
Ciao.